Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name is Sarah and my channel is called Your True Shelf, and today I'm going to be doing my wrap up for the month of September. I read 4 books in September and three of them were library books. So I reduced my TBR by only 1 book, which is a shame, but never mind. So the first one that I read was The Miseducation of Come and Post by Emily Danforth. I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It's about a girl called Come and Post, and the book starts when she's roughly about 11, and she starts having some sexual encounters with girls of a similar age to her. And then she meets a girl in church who she basically falls in love with, and it's about their relationship. So this girl identifies herself as being straight, and they basically have a relationship which develops over time, and they live in a community which is pretty fundamental Christian community, and they are very strict and they would not approve of a gay relationship. So there's some completely shocking bigotry in this book. And basically, so the relationship is found out, which you do know at the beginning of no, you don't actually. You know from the back of the book, I think. And Cameron has to be sent away to a place which will cure her of being gay, which is a concept that infuriates me. But anyway, so and it's all about her experience at this place, which is called, I think it's called God's Promise. And it's about the leaders of the place, and it's about her relationship with other teenagers who are there, and how basically the teenagers are taught to be completely disgusted with themselves and that they need to let God into their hearts, and then they will be cured of what they call same-sex attraction, because they don't believe in homosexuality as an actual concept. So that's the sort of premise of the book. It was beautifully written. It's quite long. It's about 500 pages, and it's not a pacey book, but I really felt that Cameron and the other characters were ones that I could get to grips with, ones that I understood, that I cared about. I thought that that Emily Danforth had written really well from a teenage girl's perspective, and I really liked the cultural references because she's growing up in the early 90s. She's a little bit older than I am, but I got a lot of the similar cultural references, and it was just a brilliant book which talked about so many super important issues. Thank goodness that I have never experienced a community like that. Their beliefs were just absolutely shocking. I was appalled at the behaviour of the church in the book. So I'd recommend this book to anyone who basically likes YA fiction. It's completely readable by adults as well as YA. It's a really good LGBTQ plus read, and it raises some really important issues. That was the first one. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars. The next one I read was Exit West by Mohsin Hamid. So this book I was really intrigued about, but when I heard people describing it on BookTube, and it was listed for the Booker Prize, it's basically it's set in Syria, possibly. I don't actually know if it tells us where it's set, and it's basically about a couple who meet and who get into a relationship, and then a war starts where they live, and people are finding these mysterious doors, which when you go through them, you then end up in another part of the world. And as soon as the door is discovered in another country, they then basically are guarding the door, and people are stopping them from getting to the door. And if they do get through the door, then they often find that all the people who are coming through the door are sort of rounded up and put into refugee camps. And it's about all of the issues that arise from a war, from being refugees or asylum seekers, from relationships and how war can change relationships, about families when some members of the family are left behind. It was a really interesting book in that respect, but I didn't love it, so I gave it 3 stars. I can't really remember what my main bugbears were about it, but I just remember thinking that it was an interesting concept, but I think I kind of lost enthusiasm for it a little bit, so I only gave it 3 stars. The next one I read was When God Was a Rabbit by Sarah Winman, which I absolutely loved. So I read Tin Man a while ago by Sarah Winman, and I talked about that on this channel and gave that a 5-star review as well. And When God Was a Rabbit was written before Tin Man, and it's focusing on a girl called Eleanor and her brother called Joe, and they grow up and they're really close, and something happens to Eleanor when she's quite young, which is kind of referenced throughout the book. And also, so they're living in, I think, in Essex at the beginning, and they end up, I won't sort of give too much away, but they end up moving to Cornwall and having this kind of really idyllic childhood. But then it talks about the kind of their own issues, so it's really focused on the brother-sister relationship. But then also there are lodgers who come and stay with them in Cornwall who become sort of part of their family. And it talks a lot about the relationship between the parents and the children. And it talks about as they grow up and they move on in their lives, how they're kind of always drawn back to home and to each other. And I can't really talk too much about the plot, a bit like Tin Man. I don't want to give anything away, but it's just so beautiful. She has this magical way of writing where it's beautifully written and easy to read at the same time. So there's no kind of massively dense areas where you're having to really concentrate and you're having to reread passages, but you reread them just because they're so lovely. And I don't know how she does it, how she writes so well and so simply at the same time. It's just gorgeous. And so I'd really, really recommend When God Was a Rabbit. I just can't speak highly enough. I believe she has one other book out and I can't wait to read it because she's one of my new favourites. I absolutely love her books. And then the final one that I read in September was Revolutionary Road by Richard Yates. I've had this on my shelves for years, and when I did my It's Been a Long Time video, I picked out 10 of the books that I've had on my TBR since 2011, and I actually got around to reading one of them, which I was really pleased with. So I gave this book a 3-star review. This is a book where there's 2 characters, Frank and April Wheeler, and they are living in the 1960s in America, and they are basically faking it. So they don't want to be one of the kind of boring suburban couples who are just, you know, mum's stay-at-home mum, dad works in an office, they do all the same things everyone else does. They don't want to be like that. They want to be different. They don't want to be boring. And so they're both secretly trying to work on not being this kind of domestic couple, and their marriage is in quite big trouble, and they decide that they want to move to Europe, and then it's about how they then treat other people when they think they're kind of better than them because they're moving to Europe, and things all start unraveling. Their marriage is kind of like a big fake, but they're faking it to each other and faking it to themselves, and it all just unravels and goes hideously wrong. And the writing was fantastic. The writing was just spot on, like really atmospheric. The dialogue was perfect. Like you could, when they were having arguments and things, you could just see them doing what they were doing and hear them saying what they were saying. But it is a blimmin' bleak story. So if you're looking for something uplifting, light and cheerful, don't read this book. If you're looking for something kind of intense and psychological and you know, like brooding, then pick it up, and the writing is great. But I only gave it 3 stars just because I kind of wanted it to be a bit happier. It was pretty, like say, pretty blooming miserable. So I couldn't enjoy it as much. Maybe I would have enjoyed it more at a different time, I don't know. But I'm glad I read it. I will be putting it in a charity bag, so I have cleared 1 space on my TBR. So that was everything that I read in the month of September. Let me know if you've read any of the books and what you've been reading, and if you want to try any of the books based on the recommendations. If you could give this video a thumbs up or a subscribe, that would be amazing, and I will be back soon with another video. Bye!